Hello everyone, this is Hairy Nick. How are you all going out there? It's time once again to take a look at the X-Wing meta. Yes, I know it's been a hot minute since I've done this, and I really wanted to make sure when I got back into this that I reevaluate the way I make these videos. In the past, we've spoken about a lot of the different stats, big ships, small ships, medium ships, size of squads, faction breakdown, all that kind of stuff, and apart from anything else, that added a lot of time to the production of those videos. But my attitude towards these videos are that information becomes less and less relevant the more we've moved into second edition and we've gotten to a stage where the amount of factions, the amount of ships, everything is way more diverse. That kind of information was great in first edition, but I really just want in second edition to focus more on the list archetypes themselves. Yeah, sure, it's interesting if there's lots of two-ship builds out there, but the way you react to one two-ship build as opposed to another as a player going into a tournament can be quite varied, whereas in first edition it was a bit more predictable. So that's what I want to do in this video. I just want to focus on different list archetypes and go from there. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this tournament right here, Dathomir, which is one of these extended qualifiers that Gold Squadron Podcast is putting together for their sort of World Cup tournament thing that they're organising. The equivalent of, it's not an officially sanctioned FFG tournament or set of tournaments. But yeah, first of all, massive shout out to Dion and the guys from Gold Squadron Podcast for putting this together so we actually have something like this year. I mean, there's basically no FFG organised play at the moment. In case any of you have not heard of these and are interested, we actually have next weekend the Concord Dawn. This is like the replacement for the Australian Open, which I'll be participating in. And then there is a tournament in America and Poland. And there's a hyperspace one set in America. Again, it's all online, so it doesn't really matter. You can play in all the different countries if you want, but they're meant to be replacements for the tournaments that would be played in those countries. And they're all qualifiers for the Coruscant Invitational, which will be happening in November, which will be a lot of fun. In the meantime, let's have a look at the British tournament of Dathomir and talk about the top 8 archetypes. So we're not going to be snapshotting any amount of the cut per se. We're just going to jump into the top 8 here. There obviously are some more lists down here that did make the cut, but we're going to be focusing on this top 8 to sort of focus on something nice and quantifiable for the sake of a video. It is worth pointing out that there are no scum lists. I don't think we have any resistance either, so no scum or resistance in these top 8, but there were some that made the cut. Just in terms of a meta watch, I'd rather just talk about the list that did a bit better. Starting off with this one here, AP and the boys with the Rebellion, with AP5, Luke Skywalker, and Wedge Antilles. And this is very interesting. Both Luke and Wedge have been meta relevant for a very long time now. And I believe Wedge went down in points slightly in the last points change. AP5 didn't change, is by far the most popular sheath-apede pilot. With good reason, a lot of agency to support other ships. Also interesting, Leia Organa on AP5 as well. Now, Leia was a mainstay of Rebel Beef lists, and Rebel Beef can make a lot more use out of Princess Leia because there's more ships that can get the benefit of being able to reduce the difficulty of their maneuvers. It's just pretty straightforward. The more ships you have in your list, the higher the ceiling on Leia is. So only flying it alongside 2 other ships seems like it is a low value play, but given that these ships are very, very powerful, it means they can do red maneuvers and still take actions, especially when they've got afterburners, so they can do like K turns and then use the boost and do actions and all that kind of stuff. It seems pretty decent. Also interesting, we have proton torpedoes on both the X-Wings and also instinctive aim on Luke. It's very flavorful. It matches what happened in the original Battle of Yavin, but it's not something that we've seen too much of. Really stacking the points on these 2 X-Wing pilots and only having one relatively cheap ship alongside them seems like a bit of a shift in the way we actually fly these, so that's quite interesting. Let's move along to this list, unnamed. I'm going to name this one Annie and the Boys, because why not? It's Anakin Skywalker and a bunch of Gold Squadron troopers. Now, this is not surprising. We've seen heaps of Gold Squadron troopers in the meta already. This is the only list that we're going to talk about in this video that features them. Nothing on them, pretty much as it were. The named pilots on this platform went down in points in the recent point change, and this one didn't. It's a slight investment to go into any other named pilot, like 2 points for Tucker or something like that. It's just not worth it. The ship just functions better when you just use that base pilot. Also, R4P17 is interesting on Anakin Skywalker here. 2 charges. After you fully execute a red maneuver, you may spend 1 charge to perform an action, even while stressed. Anakin Skywalker reads, after you fully execute a maneuver, if there's an enemy ship in your forward arc at range 0 to 1, or in your bullseye firing arc, you may spend a force to remove 1 stress token. So they combo together quite nicely. Anakin Delta 7B. It seems no matter the way FFG costs these, they're just always seem to be meta relevant. I still think there's some balancing to be done with this ship, and indeed with these generic pilots. The fact that we're still seeing a lot of these, I think, is indicative of them being perhaps a hair too efficient, I want to say. I know FFG in the past have always favoured named pilots in terms of what sees meta play, and what we're seeing here in these lists really is indicative of generics just seeing all the play. Speaking of which, we're going to go into our first list that has Nantex fighters, and this is not the last time we're going to be seeing them. Spoiler alert. Moving up to number 6, we have Grievous and a bunch of Patronarchy arena aces. Now, I'm not going to talk about these guys in this list because there's one that, again, spoiler alert, is just these pilots. Let's just talk about Grievous here, just flying with Solus 1. If you perform a primary attack against a ship, if they're not in their arc, you get to reroll up to 2 attack dice, and Solus 1 just gives you a bunch of defensive bonuses. Also gives you a bit of insurance if you basically fail to execute General Grievous to his intended purpose. Or if you're getting flanked while you're trying to flank one of your opponent's ships. A bit of mind games going on here, but essentially it's just there because you get a bit of defensive bonuses occasionally and a bit more hull. It's just all great value stuff. Again, being a mainstay of the Star Wars universe, being an actual named character in the movie seems to give you a bit more preference in terms of meta treatment. So yeah, let's just leave the rest of these Nantex for now and move along. We have a first order list here, just making it into the top 8. And this is interesting because there's no quick draw here. We have a bunch of Synard Jameis engineers. Again, generics. FFG may have pushed these a little bit too far. I don't know, do we really want to be moving into a meta where these see a lot more play over something like Kylo? Doesn't seem very exciting. Hollow. This is quite interesting though. Initiative 5. At the start of the engagement phase, you must transfer one of your tokens to another friendly ship at range 0 to 1, which could be that deplete token that you get off the baked in ability. Proud Tradition flipping over also makes your focuses red, so if you get stress tokens, you can give them to a Synard Jameis engineer. That seems okay. The Tire Silencer does have a lot of blue maneuvers as well. But it's good to see a bit of play out of Hollow. It's interesting, we were sort of trying to ascertain what would be the more preferential pilot when this was first released, and it was between Hollow and Major Von Reg. Major Von Reg because it's Initiative 6, and Hollow because they're using the better ability. And it seems like Hollow has come out on top for the time being at least, so that's interesting. Always good to see something with that quick draw in it. Again, do we really want to be seeing these generics being flown en masse? It's usually an indication of a ship being a bit too cheap when this happens, but then again, a lot of generic spams are happening at the moment, so I don't know, maybe that's just the universe we're moving into. Okay, we do have a couple of Imperialists. Let's have a look at these. Moving up to the 4th most played list in the cut. We have 2 TIE Advanced V1s and 2 Sigma Squadron Ace TIE Phantoms. Again, just with Crackshot, pretty much what we've come to expect with these. It's interesting, this ship is still viable even after all of the nerfs it's had. It used to be a case of you just fly 4 of these with whatever, like various upgrades it's had over its lifetime. It's still viable even though you can't quite squeeze 4 of them in. Obviously you can't take Duke, we're taking Crackshot instead. Crackshot's still a great offensive card to add onto them. Nowhere near as powerful as Duke, but we don't have the points to do that. And I think that's okay. 5th Brother, 7th Sister. 5th Brother has homing missiles as well as fire control systems to get some nice offense on that. Of course, that works natively with Fifth Brother's ability. While you perform an attack, after you neutralise result step, if the attack hit, you may spend 2 force to add a critical hit. This is pretty much indicative of these 2 ships as an archetype. It's been floating around for a while now. But I gotta say, I do like this list from the point of view it has 2 named pilots. It adds a bit of interest. I think this list moving from 4 generics to 2 generics and 2 named pilots, it leads to much more interesting gameplay. I don't like just having 4 generics if I were to make that choice. So I think the meta on this type of archetype is shifting in a good direction. Let's move along. The third most played list was a combination of vultures, hyenas, and belbelabs. And if we go below even like the top 8 most played archetypes, there are more vulture lists, as one would expect. This made the top 4. General Grievous, 2 bombardment drones. Let's just remind ourselves what happens with these. If you drop a device, you may launch that device instead using the same template. That's good fun with proxy mines. Just a nice, big, beefy explosion. Let's just bring that up here so you guys can see it. Basically, you get 2 of this very large token. It's about the size of a large asteroid if you've not played with it before. And if you fly over it, you roll a number of attack dice. I think it's 3 from memory, and you just take raw damage. It's just good for damage output. It's really not much to say about this. It's not a gimmicky bomb like a lot of the ones we're seeing released recently. So flying a lot of that, getting board control alongside these vulture droids, just generic Initiative 1 Trade Federation drones. Again, Grievous with Solus 1, Crackshot's on there too, but the presence of Crackshot doesn't ultimately change what's happened here. This is just able to fit into this list because of how the points work out. Yes, just a lot of vultures, who would have thought? Still a thing. Moving along, we have another list here that made the top 4. So this is very, very interesting. We actually have some play here from the TIE Aggressor. And a lot of people were sort of speculating on this after that last points change because this ship has been historically terrible. Quite bad. It's basically the Empire's answer to the Y-Wing, where it's a TIE fighter with a bit more of a TIE-ish dial, but still it's nowhere near as good as other TIE dials. But it has that turret slot, so it can take dorsal turret, which is just a basic generic attack. 2 red dice, turreted attack, nothing fancy. Now we have the ability to fly, 5 of them alongside Captain Feroff? That seems pretty competitive. I think it's just like 6 of them alone isn't really that good. But it also means we can put like a commander style card alongside them, which in this case is Sloane. I'll just bring her up here in the middle of the screen. So when one of your friendly ships are destroyed, the attacker gains 2 stress tokens, and you get to reroll dice against opponent ships that are stressed, which of course naturally works with those 2 mechanics, but of course that's just always upside you get, even if your opponent just does a red maneuver. Hey, you get to reroll attack dice. And when your friendly ship range 0 to 3, so yeah, basically any one of these 7 ships gets that bonus. It seems good. It seems like there's just enough upside on flying these. They've just been tweaked enough. Now, this is only one list in this cut, so I don't think this is indicative of the sign-up special that's been pushed too far, but I think it's something we should keep an eye on as the meta moves forward. We're definitely in a stage where the meta has shifted very, very much towards these generics. I don't know whether it's going to lead to an emergency points change. I don't like speculating on that kind of stuff, but it is quite prevalent, it is worth saying, because as we have a look at all these lists, these are one list within the top cut. There's a few 2s here, but that's because there was another tournament on this day, sort of muddying up the data. If we go to the top one here, it wasn't quite 7, it's actually 6 lists that made this top cut in this tournament with just Nantex, and they're all Patronarchy aces. I think we have some instances of Gorgle being flown alongside these if we bring up all of these lists. So we're just taking a look here. That's another generic there in the Stalgazen Hive Guard. But essentially, this is the list here. Some variations of like Crackshot, Marksmanship, Predator, flown in whatever combination that makes the points work out. But these 2 versions of the list right here are what actually was the winner of the tournament and the runner-up. That must have been a messy game. I should have a look at that at some stage. As you can see, yeah, it's just... there's not much difference. In this version of the list, as in the champion, we have 4 of the Patronarchy Ace with crack shot and 2 with predator and crack shot. In this version, we have 2 crack shots and 4 with predator and crack shot. So as you can see, the winner saved some points by removing 2 copies of predator, got the bid, and that was probably the difference between it winning. The reason I bring that up is because this ship is so benefited from being able to fly last. So in mirrors, you want that bid. It can take tractor tokens after it does a maneuver, which means it can do a barrel roll for free off the back of any maneuver. Really solid. Yeah, I don't think there's much to say about this. The fact that it already works naturally with that bullseye firing arc, so crack shots are no-brainer with this as well. Again, Predator only works in that bullseye firing arc. If you're doing an attack in the bullseye, you get to reroll a dice, and that's just good. I think the main takeaway from this, given that basically every other archetype we just looked at was like a one-of in the cut, the only reason that they were ranked the way they were was because how high they finished. Where this is 6 lists in the cut. That is not irrelevant. FFG just can't seem to get this ship right. And again, I don't know if it is going to lead to an emergency change. I mean, we'll see what happens in the Australian tournament next week, whether this is still that prevalent. But yeah, I think it's worth keeping an eye on this. The Nantex is very serious at this stage, and I think FFG have got a little bit more tweaking to do on this ship. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I'll be sure to cover the next few tournaments as they come. And again, thanks for everyone's patience. I realise these videos haven't been produced recently. It's just one of those things where it does take so much more input for me to sort of sift through all the information. And again, I just want to reiterate, I feel like this is a much better approach to producing these videos. Apart from the fact that there's so much less work for me to do in preparation, I get to spend more time just talking about the lists. At the end of the day, focusing on what these archetypes is going to be most relevant for those of you who want to go to these tournaments and actually prepare to fly with or against them. I mean, that's at the end of the day why people watch these kinds of videos. Speaking of which, if you have flown with or against these types of archetypes, sound off in the comments below. I want to hear about the experience with these. I haven't flown a lot of super competitive X-Wing recently, so it is sort of fresh for me as it is for a lot of people here. In the meantime, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things that makes the YouTube algorithm very happy. Also, we have a Patreon for the channel where you can help support us directly. It really does mean a lot, especially right now in 2020 where everything's a little bit dire. So if you sub to the channel or support the Patreon, I really appreciate all the support we get here. In the meantime, I'll catch you all in the next video.